England, 1892. They had learned long ago how to forget her. Not deliberately, not cruelly, at least not in ways that required effort, but through the quiet, practiced neglect that was far more efficient. Kate Whitmore existed on the edges of rooms, on the margins of conversations, in the pauses where no one thought to look twice. At 24 she had perfected the art of being unobtrusive. Ashbourne Hall glittered that night as if it had been carved from light itself. Chandeliers blazed overhead, their gas flames trembling like captive stars. Cream-colored silk draped the walls, threaded with late autumn roses whose scent mingled with champagne, perfume, and ambition. It was a wedding worthy of admiration, envy, and gossip for weeks to come. It was her brother's wedding. Kate stood near the conservatory doors, hands folded carefully at her waist, wearing a pale blue gown that had once belonged to her mother. 10 years ago it had been fashionable. Tonight, despite careful alterations and nights spent sewing by candlelight, it whispered of economy rather than elegance. Around her, women glided across the polished floor in gowns from Paris, jewels flashing with every movement. Their laughter rang bright and careless, the sound of people who had never doubted their place in the world. Kate did not begrudge them that certainty. She had simply learned not to share it. Her brother Thomas danced at the center of the room, his new bride radiant beside him. Lydia Fairchild, now Lydia Whitmore, was everything Kate was not. Beautiful, wealthy, and supremely confident in the knowledge that society bent toward her rather than away. Their mother stood nearby, holding court among the matrons, finally elevated by her son's advantageous marriage into new money. Kate watched her with a detached familiarity, recognizing the way pride softened her mother's sharpness when it was earned through someone else. The orchestra swelled into a waltz. Couples swept across the floor like leaves caught in a golden current. Kate observed them as one might observe a painting behind glass, beautiful, distant, untouchable. She had danced before, of course. Obligatory dances, courtesy dances, never chosen ones. Someone laughed behind her. It was a sharp, cutting sound. Kate did not need to turn to know who it was. Poor Kate, Lydia's voice carried just enough to be heard. Still unmarried at 24. One would think desperation might eventually make her interesting. The words landed softly, but their weight was familiar. A ripple of amusement passed through the cluster of women around Lydia. Kate felt heat creep into her face. She kept her posture straight, her expression composed. Years of practice had taught her that reacting only sharpened their pleasure. She did try her luck last season, another voice added. With Edwin Pierce, I believe. A laugh followed. And even he declined. That one stung more than she expected. Edwin Pierce, polite, vain, and painfully unremarkable, had shown her attention for precisely long enough to make her hope before redirecting it elsewhere. The memory still burned, quiet and humiliating. Kate turned toward the conservatory doors. She did not flee. She never fled. She simply withdrew the way one does when remaining becomes too costly. Her hand brushed the cold brass handle just as another whisper floated past her ear. She should be grateful anyone notices her at all. That was enough. The conservatory welcomed her with humid air heavy with ferns and night-blooming jasmine. Glass walls rose around her like a cathedral of stars, the darkness beyond pressing close. She moved past marble planters and a trickling fountain, the soft sound of water a small mercy against the noise she had left behind. At the terrace she stopped, gripping the stone balustrade with both hands. The night air cooled her flushed skin. Clouds hung low, swollen with rain not yet fallen. Below her, the garden stretched into shadow, formal hedges dissolving into black. Kate closed her eyes. Just for a moment she allowed herself to feel it. The loneliness. The quiet understanding that she was kept because duty required it, not because she was wanted. The certainty that she would always be the daughter introduced last, if at all. Tears pressed behind her eyes. She breathed slowly, counting each inhale, each exhale as she had taught herself to do since girlhood. She would endure. She always did. A footstep sounded behind her. Kate stiffened. I did not mean to intrude. The voice was male, deep and measured. Not apologetic, considerate. She turned slowly. He stood near the conservatory doors, tall and unmistakably commanding. Evening clothes fit him with a perfection that spoke of old money and London tailors. Dark hair swept back from a face carved with severity rather than softness. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gray. Almost colorless in the dim light. Focused entirely on her. She recognized him at once. James Cavendish. Duke of Eveleigh. Everyone did. The most powerful man in England after the crown itself. Widowed 3 years. Appearing in society only out of obligation, always alone. Rumors clung to him like mist, coldness, grief, danger. Your Grace, Kate said automatically, dipping into a curtsy that felt insufficient. I did not realize. You have nothing to apologize for. He stepped closer, movements deliberate. Up close, she saw the faint lines at his eyes, the threads of silver at his temples. He looked older than the papers claimed. Or perhaps simply wearier. The offense tonight was not yours. Her face burned anew. He had heard them. All of it. I should return inside, she murmured, moving to pass him. Anything to avoid pity. Wait. The word was not an order. It was a request. Kate froze. He studied her face with unsettling focus, as if she were something worth examining. Not her dress. Not her lack of jewels. You should not have to endure such treatment, he said quietly. Not from them. Not from anyone. Something in her chest cracked. This is how things are, she replied, though her voice trembled. I am accustomed to it. I am not. He took one step closer. She caught the scent of sandalwood, expensive and understated. Then he said the words that would divide her life into before and after. Pretend you are with me. Kate stared at him, certain she had misheard. Your Grace. I don't understand. Return to the ballroom on my arm, he said calmly. Let them see you beside me. Let them wonder what they have overlooked. The rain began to fall, light at first, tapping against glass and stone. This will cause talk, she whispered. Let it. And your reputation. He smiled just barely. Survives worse than gossip. Thunder rumbled in the distance. He extended his arm and waited. Kate looked back toward the glowing ballroom. Toward the world that had taught her to be small, quiet, grateful for scraps of courtesy. Fear wrapped tight around her ribs. But beneath it stirred something unfamiliar. Anger. Not wild. Not destructive. Steady. Her hand trembled as she placed it on his sleeve. The choice was made. They entered together. Conversation died mid-breath. The Duke of Eveleigh, who rarely lingered at functions, who danced with no one, who had been untouchable since his wife's death, walked through the ballroom with Kate Whitmore on his arm. People parted automatically. Kate kept her gaze forward, spine straight. Whispers followed them like sparks. Her mother stood frozen, glass half raised. Thomas stared in disbelief. Lydia's smile vanished. James did not slow. At the center of the room he stopped. Miss Whitmore, he said clearly. May I have this dance? Silence. Kate placed her hand in his. The orchestra resumed, hesitant at first, then confident. He guided her effortlessly. His hand at her waist was steady, grounding. For the first time in her life, Kate did not feel like an apology. She felt chosen. And as they turned beneath the chandeliers, Kate Whitmore understood something terrifying and extraordinary. She was no longer invisible. The applause that followed the final note of the waltz was polite, hesitant, and painfully insufficient. Kate felt it like an afterthought. James did not release her immediately. His hand remained steady at her waist for a moment longer than etiquette required, grounding her while the room slowly remembered how to breathe. Then he stepped back, inclined his head, and offered his arm once more. Shall we? He asked quietly. Kate nodded, though her heart was pounding hard enough that she was certain everyone could hear it. They moved toward the edge of the ballroom as conversation surged back to life behind them, whispers blooming into speculation, curiosity sharpening into judgment. She caught fragments as they passed. The Duke never dances. With her? Surely it's charity. No, did you see his face? Kate kept her gaze forward. She had endured whispers before. What unsettled her now was how much she cared. They had nearly reached the corridor when a familiar voice cut through the noise. Kate. Her brother stood several paces away, his expression tight with anger and something that looked dangerously like embarrassment. Lydia hovered beside him, pale beneath her pearls, eyes bright with fury. Kate stopped. James did not tighten his grip, did not pull her onward. He simply remained where he was, solid and immovable, silently leaving the choice to her. Kate turned. Yes, Thomas? What do you think you're doing? He demanded, his voice low but sharp. Have you lost your senses? Before Kate could answer, James stepped forward. Lord Whitmore, he said evenly. Your sister is doing nothing improper. Thomas stiffened. With respect, Your Grace, this is a family matter. Then you should have treated it as such before it became a public one. Silence rippled outward. Kate saw Lydia's mouth open, her eyes flashing. This is outrageous, she snapped. My wedding, has become a spectacle because of her. Kate felt the familiar instinct to apologize rise automatically. She swallowed it down. I did not make myself a spectacle, she said quietly. You did. Lydia stared at her, stunned. James's gaze did not leave Lydia's face. Miss Whitmore attended your wedding in good faith. She was mocked publicly. I corrected that. By humiliating me? Lydia demanded. No, James replied coolly. By revealing you. That ended the conversation. He turned back to Kate. You need not remain here. She hesitated only a moment. No, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I will not leave as if I've done something wrong. Something like approval flickered across James's expression. Very well, he said. Then we stay. The decision landed like a challenge thrown into the center of the room. They did not dance again. Instead, James escorted Kate to a quieter corner, where servants hovered uncertainly, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Conversation nearby grew cautious, polite, brittle. Kate felt exposed, as though she had stepped into sunlight after a lifetime indoors. Are you well? James asked under his breath. I think so, she replied honestly. I'm frightened. But I don't wish I hadn't done it. Good, he said. Fear is not a sign of error. Only of consequence. Before she could respond, a footman approached, bowing deeply. Your Grace. Lady Whitmore requests your sister's presence in the East Parlor. Kate closed her eyes briefly. James did not. Tell Lady Whitmore that Miss Whitmore will join her shortly, he said, and that I will accompany her. The footman hesitated, then bowed again and withdrew. Kate turned to James. You don't need to. I do, he said simply. You've faced them alone your entire life. You will not tonight. The East Parlor smelled faintly of smoke and tension. Their mother sat rigidly near the hearth, hands folded, expression carved from ice. Thomas paced. Lydia stood near the window, her back stiff with indignation. All three turned as Kate and James entered. Catherine, her mother began sharply. What have you done? James answered before Kate could. Nothing wrong. Lady Whitmore stiffened. Your Grace, we appreciate your concern, but you will listen, James interrupted calmly. Because your daughter deserves to be heard. Kate felt her throat tighten. Thomas stopped pacing. Your Grace, this has gone far enough. The gossip began before I intervened, James said. Your sister was being humiliated publicly. That is not true, Lydia snapped. Kate looked at her. You laughed. Silence. You laughed, Kate repeated more firmly. You mocked my dress, my age, my unmarried state. And when someone defended me, you called it charity. Lydia flushed. I was joking. No, Kate said. You were cruel. Her mother rose. Kate, enough. You are embarrassing yourself. James's gaze hardened. She is embarrassing no one. Lady Whitmore turned toward him sharply. Your Grace, you must understand that Kate's position is one you have allowed to be diminished for years. The words fell like stones. Thomas looked stunned. That's unfair. Is it? James asked quietly. Because from where I stand, you have benefited from your sister's silence while offering her little protection in return. Kate felt something loosen in her chest, painful but freeing. Enough, her mother snapped. This ends now. Kate will return to the country with us tomorrow. Kate inhaled. No, she said. The room froze. I will not. Her mother stared at her as though she had spoken in another language. You are not serious. I am. James turned to Kate, his expression softening. This choice must be yours. Kate nodded. I will remain in London. And live where? Her mother demanded. You cannot stay here. And you certainly cannot. She will stay under proper chaperonage, James said. My aunt, the Dowager Duchess of Harrington, has agreed to receive her. That struck like a thunderclap. Lady Whitmore's composure cracked. The Duchess of Harrington? Yes. Kate felt dizzy. The Duchess of Harrington was untouchable, respected, feared, admired. You arranged this without consulting us? Thomas asked weakly. I arranged it with Miss Whitmore's consent, James replied. Which is the only consent required. Her mother's lips thinned. Kate, think carefully. This path leads to scrutiny. Judgment. I know, Kate said. But at least it will be my life. James offered her his arm. Shall we? He asked. Kate took it. They left without looking back. Outside, the night air was cool and damp. Carriages rattled away, carrying guests eager to share their versions of events. Kate exhaled shakily. James glanced at her. Still with me? Yes, she said. Though I don't know what tomorrow brings. Neither do I, he replied. But I do know this, tonight mattered. They walked in silence for a few moments. Why? Kate asked finally. Why risk this? James stopped, turning to face her fully. Because cruelty offends me, he said. And because when I saw you standing in that rain, accepting what should never have been yours to bear, I realized something. What? That indifference is a choice, he said quietly. And tonight I chose not to be indifferent. Kate swallowed hard. The carriage door opened nearby. Get some rest, James said gently. Tomorrow will not be quiet. She met his gaze. Will you regret this? He considered, then shook his head. No. I would regret not doing it far more. He bowed, formal and restrained once more. Until tomorrow, Miss Whitmore. Until tomorrow, Your Grace. As the carriage pulled away, Kate looked back once. James stood exactly where she had left him, alone beneath the lamps, unmoving, already bearing the weight of what he had chosen. For the first time in her life, Kate understood something clearly. Being seen was not without cost. But being invisible had cost her everything. The house of the Dowager Duchess of Harrington was quiet in a way Kate had never known. Not the brittle silence of disapproval or the strained quiet of being tolerated, but something softer, deliberate. The sort of stillness that allowed a person to exist without explanation. Kate stood at the tall window of the guest chamber assigned to her, watching early morning light spill across the square below. London was waking, carriages rolling, shopkeepers lifting shutters, but for the first time in her life the day ahead belonged to her. She rested a hand against the cool glass and tried to steady the unfamiliar weight in her chest. Freedom, she was discovering, was not light. It carried responsibility and fear. The Duchess received her later that morning in a sunlit drawing room lined with books and portraits of women who looked as though they had lived entire lives on their own terms. You may call me Eleanor, the Duchess said, pouring tea herself. Titles have their place. This is not one of them. Kate accepted the cup with both hands. Thank you, Eleanor. The older woman studied her over the rim. You understand why you are here? Yes. And you understand that society will not be kind. Kate nodded. I am accustomed to that. Eleanor's mouth curved faintly. That is precisely what must change. Days passed. Not quickly. Not easily. Kate learned the rhythms of a household that expected her presence rather than tolerated it. She walked in Hyde Park without shrinking. She attended small gatherings where her opinions were asked for, and listened to. James visited often, always with propriety, always measured. Their conversations were careful at first. Polite. Guarded. Then one afternoon he invited her to Eveleigh House. It is past time, he said quietly. And you should not imagine a future without seeing all of the past. The estate was immense, its stone facade softened by ivy and age. Inside, the halls echoed faintly, not with emptiness but with memory. They walked together until they reached a long gallery. Portraits lined the walls. Women. Men. Generations of Cavendish lineage. And then she saw her. A woman painted in soft light, dark hair pulled back simply, eyes calm and intelligent. She stood beside a window, one hand resting on a book. "This is Caroline," James said. "My wife." Kate stopped. "She was remarkable," he continued, his voice steady but quiet. "Kind without being weak. Strong without spectacle." Kate did not look away. "She was beautiful." "Yes." They stood in silence. "I will not pretend she does not exist," James said at last. "Nor will I ask you to compete with her memory." Kate turned to him. "I wouldn't know how." "That," he said, meeting her gaze, "is why this might work." Later, society tested her. At a formal dinner, a woman made a pointed remark about charity and ambition. Kate felt the familiar instinct to retreat. Instead she smiled. "I've learned," she said evenly, "that ambition is only improper when it belongs to a woman without protection." The silence that followed was absolute. James watched from across the table, pride flickering in his eyes, but he did not intervene. She did not need him to. The realization settled into Kate like warmth. It was not his power that had changed her life. It was the permission she had finally given herself. Weeks later they stood together on the terrace at dusk. "I will not offer you a grand promise," James said, "nor a sudden proposal. I know too well the damage done by rushing toward certainty." Kate considered his words, the honesty in them. "Then offer me the truth," she said. "I am afraid," he admitted. "But I am also willing." She nodded. "So am I." He took her hand, not possessively, not desperately. Deliberately. And in that moment, Kate understood something she had never been taught. Love was not endurance. It was choice.